Welcome to Rumble Book Club. I'm your host, Mike Hernandez, and this is the show where a normal guy like me can talk about interesting books I've read, old and new, good and bad. So if you like the show, you like the content, you like the books that I talk about, or maybe you just want to learn English from an idiot, well, you picked the right place, my friend. You can follow me on Twitter and Parler, or you can follow me on TikTok, or subscribe to my content right down below on YouTube and Rumble. But more importantly, share this content with your friends. Let's talk about it, and comment down below. Let me know if there's any videos or books that you want me to talk about, and I'll be happy to mention them on the show, and I might even give you a shout out on the show for recommending me to a good book. Today we're going to take a look at a wonderful book that I actually just finished reading, and once again, I'm glad I read it because now I get to share it with you. Today we're going to be taking a look at The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass by Frederick Douglass. This is actually the second work by a former slave that I've read before. The first book I read and did a video of was the autobiography of Booker T. Washington called Up From Slavery. So I was actually really excited to read this, and I gotta tell you, I wasn't disappointed at all. This was a fantastic book. This was printed in 1845. It details the life, the journey, the struggle for an education, and the fight to achieve freedom of one of America's greatest heroes. Frederick Douglass is one of the founding fathers of the abolitionist movement and a premier figure for the advancement of black Americans in the Reconstruction era. Now let's look at the aesthetics. It's very formal. It has a regal photo of an elderly Frederick Douglass. Later on in years, photography was still relatively new, so this was originally black and white, and they were able to colorize it with modern technology. It's got a simple color scheme as far as the book, with no wasted words or imagery. You just have the title, got the man, the myth, the legend, and there's John Hancock down there. So when it comes to my rating for the aesthetics, strong, 10 out of 10. Now, let's look at the readability. Frederick Douglass's writing is concise and yet eloquent. It reminds me of the autobiographical work by Booker T. Washington, Up From Slavery. He's to the point, he's direct in his story, and tells everything bluntly. It's fantastic. He has a masterful hold on the English language, which indicates just how passionate he was to learn the language in its written form. As for how it reads physically, through no fault of Frederick Douglass's, this is completely the fault of Millennium Publications who printed it. It is brutal for your eyes. I'm sorry to say that, but it's got a handful of pages, but with the size, it feels really awkward, like you're holding some kind of college pamphlet. And then it's got these big walls of text with eggshell white pages and very tiny print. Like, this is a nightmare for your eyes. So I do recommend getting this book. I don't recommend getting this publication. If you do get The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, pick a different publication. Do not get the Millennium Publications. Nonetheless, despite the fact that this publication absolutely botched it, the readability for the whole piece, printer and author, is a strong 7 out of 10. Frederick Douglass gives bone-chilling details of what it's like to be a slave from boyhood to manhood. He gives specific accounts of places and people to verify the truth in his words. He actually calls out people that try to claim that maybe he's lying, maybe he never was a slave, maybe he was always a free black man in America, and he calls that BS and gives specific details to where you can go back and verify this stuff. One of the terrifying things is you learn about the randomness of abuse slaves would suffer at the whims of their masters. There wasn't even a method half the time. It was just, if they had a bad day, they'd just take it out on you as a slave, which is absolutely horrific. You learn about their barbarity even among the better slave owners. So people tend to highlight the strictly the worst or strictly the best. And he says from top down, even the good ones, there was a severe and oppressive injustice about it. What's worse than the breaking of their bodies, though, that what he really emphasizes was the breaking of their spirit, and it's heartbreaking. You learn that he never really knew his own mother and took the news of her death later on, long after she had already been passed away and buried. He took it passively, as if, by his own admission, he took it as he would the news of the death of a stranger. What's really messed up is that was by design. It was by design that the slave owners tore the connection between the mother and the father and the child, and they did that deliberately to make them rely on their masters. If they didn't have strong family ties, they didn't have an understanding of their religion, they would rely more on their plantation masters. Another thing you learn is about his fight for years. his struggle day after day, month after month, year after year to learn how to read by any means necessary. You also learn about his a little bit about his planning to escape, although he deliberately hides the specific methods in order to protect the journey of those who might try to follow after him and escape. He didn't want to provide information to slaveholders on what to look out for, which I thought was actually really clever. I don't want to reveal too much about the book outside of that, but there were two things that really stuck out to me. The first is that the slave owners really broke the minds and the spirits of the slaves, not just through their abuse and through their labor, but actually through the little bit of freedom that they gave them. So Frederick Douglass writes that all of the slaves were typically given about a week, right around Christmas time, to enjoy a little bit of freedom around the plantation area. Now, what they really did that was messed up was the masters discouraged them to work or to learn a skill or to better themselves during that time. They hated that. They considered you worthless if you actually tried to improve yourself. Instead, they encouraged them to drink and to fight and to wrestle and to waste their time away so that they actually became listless and miserable in what little bit of freedom that they had, and it made them want to go back to the fields to work. This is screwed up. They incentivized the slaves to waste away their potential so that they never knew what it was like to potentially be independent. Because if they could be independent, they might one day long to be free. The other thing that really stuck out to me was Douglass provided a warning to those who use religion as an excuse to take part in or promote barbarism to your fellow man. He particularly calls out the Christians of this early era that used the Gospels and preached and put on airs as if they were these wonderful people, and then went home and took part in the vicious abuse of their slaves. It really does display the darkness of that slavery era before things began that movement towards abolition, towards the civil rights movement, into the equality we see today. So as far as the content goes, I rate it the highest it can be, a strong 10 out of 10. I got this book online as part of a gift for Christmas, but I would actually recommend going to a bookstore, finding a more updated copy that's a little better for you. You can find it at your local bookstore. Any place will have it. If not, buy it online, although don't get this Millennium version. I highly recommend it. This should be in everybody's library. Go out and get yourself a copy. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and go read something.